Cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7.
Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. Martin Luther King Jr.
Evil is amongst us. Stay back, boy. This calls for divine intervention. I kick ass for the Lord.
Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on most social medias at Seth Roth II, but I am leaving Twitter very soon, so I will be going to Blue Sky and Threads, so we'll be posting that next show. Heresy and Hearsay has a Patreon site that you can find at patreon.com/Heresy and Hearsay, where you can find our past shows and help us. Just $2 a month goes a long way to make this humble show. And my co-host, this show's Margaret Sanger, September.
Well, hi there. I'm September, also known as Ninof12, and you can follow me by going to ninof12.com and see all of my podcasts and such. You can follow this show on YouTube, Facebook, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, follow, subscribe, and also give us a review because that really helps other people find us. You can find our first volume of this show on YouTube and Patreon.
Right. So today we're going to talk about the after effects of the election on November 5th, what it means, not just for the country, but also for this podcast. But first, Brother Bowie, will you lead us in a word of prayer?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Okay, so first off, I want to state this, that after this show, me and September are going to take the rest of the month of November off. We both kind of need the break and kind of rejigger. We're going to have conversations, of course, but as far as the show is concerned, it's going to be one of those things where we just need some time, a breakaway to try to figure out exactly what we're doing and what's going on with, the new administration coming in and everything else. And so news is going to be kind of fast, but it's not going to be something that we can touch on until, they actually get into power so that we can see how all of the appointments and everything kind of shake out and what they're planning on the first day as far as that kind of stuff. Secondly, and this is kind of what I'm hoping for. This election kind of taught me, and September may correct me, but this is as far as this election was, it kind of taught me that you can't reach those that refuse to listen. And so many people are blinded by whatever Trump has to say in the movement of out of hate. I just don't think we can reach them. However, that doesn't mean that I'm going to change, that I'm not going to continue to fight, but this is going to be more of a podcast for individuals that are trying and fighting the good fight and giving them a light and possible ways that they can still use faith and politics and use that to better our nation and get us better prepared for 2026 and 2028. Looking for candidates, looking for, talking points and everything else. And that's one of the things that I think this podcast would be better focused on than trying to reach those that won't listen. If they won't take their fingers out of the ears, you can't get to them. So, and it hurts me a bit that that's the case, that so many people are that way, but that's how I feel. Now, September may have a different feeling. I'll let her speak on that in a second. Finally, the show is going to go starting in January. Well, December will probably be 2 shows because it's the holiday season. But starting in January, officially, we will go to 2 shows a month for a little bit because I'm going to be starting a new job at the end of January, and I need to find out exactly how that's all going to play out as far as work schedules and everything, and writing the show, and sitting and having time to sit down and edit what little editing I have to do for the show, and then uploading it to YouTube and stuff like that. So this will take a bit, of me to figure out exactly what's going on as far as that's concerned. But once we get our footing, we may go back to a weekly show. I'm hoping we can. But, as far as having the energy and the ability to sit down and write the show and everything else, it's going to go to 2 shows a month for a little bit at least.
Okie doke.
Okay. Now, what was, as I mentioned the lesson. One of the lessons that I learned is that you can't reach people that aren't willing to listen. Is that kind of the takeaway you've gotten at this point? That they're just people that refuse to listen, no matter what the cogent argument is, or
That's not new.
Yeah.
I don't think that's new. That's always been the case. I've been, doing this for a long time, and even getting people out to vote, you end up focusing on infrequent voters. So even people who you agree with don't have confidence in the system and don't show up, whether to participate in general, where we can. The system does still work that way to show up in a lot of instances, and even to vote. So changing hearts and minds is something, all you can do is share information and do it calmly and try to respect other people. And that's become hard to do when one-issue voters have been it's like they were fading out and things were getting more nuanced. And then the lashback since Obama has been going back to these single issues. I think you feel it more because you have a more religious-based context for these conversations, and mine is, activism and pointing out bits of legislation and how they work to people. And sometimes I do have a conversation with someone where they're saying something and I'm like, actually, the other piece of that legislation does this. And sometimes they go look and they learn something. Who knows? It doesn't change enough minds, obviously, and there aren't enough people who follow up on anything other than the social media pundits that they agree with. And so what they say must be true. And don't, I don't know. It's a lot. No, there's a lot of people you cannot change their mind. We've been taught for a long time that it's pointless, and people believe that. And people have entrenched themselves very strongly in whatever their belief system is. So, I don't know. I still believe Hearts and Minds is going to be changed because on a small scale, I have seen it and occasionally accomplished it. But just like everyone says, the atmosphere is a little bit of poison right now. A lot of poison. And a lot of people were not taught how the government actually works in school. Like, no one was, because former administrations did that on purpose.
The No Child Left Behind kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there was a Reagan administrator, part of that administration. There are papers that exist where you can see where they were literally seeking to dumb down the electorate to help themselves win, and they succeeded. Look at where all our textbooks are published.
Most of them are in Texas,
and that's scarier now. It's going to be harder to do some things about it. I'm actually doing a training tomorrow night, Thursday evening, on watching school board meetings locally and what we
Right.
can do to protect our public education system on local levels. And that's my solution. Do things like that. There are ways to make your voice heard. Whether you don't have to run for school board to do it, but you can go to a meeting, and it can, I don't want to be like, wake up people is so pointless and useless, and it's just anyone, lashes back. For me, it's please go learn. Please go experience something different for yourself. Not this, I did my research, which is just you listening to whoever you agree with. We need to do more of that, and I do believe it is possible to come together and move forward in a way that benefits all people, rather than being driven by fear and loss of power. It's a very human thing. People do that. If you've ever been part of any organization of any kind, whether it's religious or political or some club or making, crafts or whatever, it gets to a certain number of people. It was around 8 or 9. And it happens, you watch monkeys do it. Like, it gets to a certain level and somebody has to be the big fish in the small pond. And then there are power struggles. And so part of it is human nature, but we can learn and overcome those kind of things because we don't have to live in fear and struggle. So get out of your comfort zone. Everybody, folks on the left that are like, oh, sympathetic, and I'm wearing my blue bracelet, I'm safe, and it's a good way to find your people, but don't have expectations that that's real allyship. Go volunteer on a committee. Go work at a food bank. I had a friend yesterday, going off on the internet about how no one's taking away your rights. You're being ridiculous and stupid. I was like, okay, so go to a women's health center and volunteer so that you can see firsthand all by yourself. I don't want to hear you did your research. Go volunteer. Couple hours for a couple of weeks, and you will see examples of how women are being affected by having these rights taken. There are a lot of things you can do to get out of your comfort zone and get facts and reality of the situation, and then decide how to move forward instead of just arguing on social media. And we weren't taught in school
social
the media literacy to deal with what we have now. Even those of us that were taught media literacy, there's nothing, because of the way it works now, that helps us sort news and propaganda without spending an awful lot of time doing our actual own research, like learning how to read legislation.
Yeah, I mean, and on this show, you've had to correct me a couple of times where I have went nuts, and I had thought I had did my research, but I had not done enough of my research, and that's one of the things. And I'm not the most media literate, but I was taught it, and I was taught the skepticism of making sure that you check your facts and your sources and everything. I was in journalism class for a year, as instead of an English class and everything else, and we were taught that kind of stuff. And I make mistakes, and everything else, and it's one of those things. And I think, as far as certain media sources, mainly Twitter, right now, is TikTok has its problems, but it's not as bad as everybody thinks. I just don't use it right now. But it's one of those things where, with like Twitter and everything else, especially with, stories coming out of Elon throttling down or deleting posts entirely of people he disagrees with.
He took for himself someone else's username to
Yep.
plug it in and use it for one of his political PACs.
Right.
It's been corrupted for a long time. I never cared for it as a platform to begin with. It was one of the first ones that was very driven by algorithm and advertising and bubbling people when they thought they were having conversations. And then when things were banned because they were dangerous and they had an ethics committee, it started to get a little better and more usable. But I only ever used it to promote shows. I wasn't having good conversations on there like ever. And then since Elon got it, I mean, come on.
It's been
I posted
a
great
trash
video about
fire
that on Facebook that somebody projected onto a Tesla building, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I recommend, honestly, if you're using social media to get information, follow Heather Cox Richardson anywhere you can.
Okay.
Heather Cox Richardson is an actual political historian.
Okay.
So she talks about the news, but puts it in an historical context. Like, we'll give examples of times in the past this happened in our history and what that means, and how that could be different now because of different factors. She's amazingly intelligent and educated, and just the best source right now that I'm sorry I haven't been spending a lot of time with her for years like other people have. But she explains things that are going on. Yesterday she was posting about the Senate voting for a new Senate Majority Leader and how that works in the Senate and how that's going to wield some power over Trump's legislative plans. And she's kind of right, or kind of left-leaning, I mean. I feel.
I know a lot of the, according to Laura Ingraham and a lot of those people on the far right are not happy with, because he's more of a disciple of Mitch McConnell, which means that he'll try to check some of. So where were we? By the way, we had a technical glitch. September's internet decided, no, you can't talk about the election right now. Fuck you.
Right?
It's a DOS attack on us.
Talking about, I was recommending people follow Heather Cox Richardson to learn more about her process and history, and mentioned the election today for a new Senate Majority Leader, and I think you were talking about John Thune.
Yep, John Thune won. It looks like here, as far as what I'm seeing, as far as the news that is just breaking, right, South Dakota. It was South Dakota, not Texas. South Dakota Senator John Thune, and that the MAGA loyalists are not happy with that because he's a moderate and a small C conservative, not a crazy conservative. So, will it stop everything? No, of course not. I looked just a few moments ago, and they still haven't called the House for either side. However, it looks like the Republicans only need 2 more to take over the House. I hope that's not the case, but
I'm not panicking about that. I have to look more closely at individual races, but it being that close in the House, like, you've usually got a couple that you can negotiate with to make it a little harder for things, especially when they're extreme things, to keep them from getting to the Senate floor.
And there's people like Matt. Yeah, and there's people like Matt Gaetz that, keeps having people look at him as far as his being a horrible human being towards young women and girls. I shouldn't say women; they were girls and everything else. And there may be he may end up getting arrested for that, and everything else. But if it's a federal charge, he may get pardoned. But if it's a state charge, and that's what they're probably trying to do is find it as a state charge. That way Trump can't, pardon him instantaneously. So we'll see how that goes. I personally think that every elementary school kid and junior high or middle school kid, depending on the schooling that you're in, should be handed a DVD of the governmental Schoolhouse Rock. That's where I learned all of my stuff until, I got a little bit older and got into high school and stuff like that. That's where you learn all the basics about our history and about the government. I'm Just a Bill is still relevant even today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit more than we just get in our PAT social studies education. But I mean, I don't feel it's nearly enough. And
No, it's a starting point.
I have on DVD all of Schoolhouse Rock, and I've lent it to so many teachers over the years.
Yeah, Schoolhouse Rock is great. I remember one Christmas I had asked for the CDs, the CD box set, and the liner notes came with a note from Drew Barrymore. So at that point, it's like, oh, I am over the moon now. Not only do I have Schoolhouse Rock, but I have, Drew Barrymore is when I was 6 years old, I first saw her in E.T. when she was 5, and I fell in love with her then, and I've had this huge crush on Drew Barrymore ever since. So, her being a huge fan of Schoolhouse Rock and everything else, she is my happy joy place when she's, in her happy joy place. So, it's one of those things I've had. That's the biggest crush I've ever had is Drew Barrymore. But that's enough about me. But yeah, in my weirdness. But as far as I do think that if the schools aren't going to teach it, that we need to teach civics to our children, and we should start clubs. I think that you can do amazing things with gaming. Vampire the Masquerade is a big political gaming. It's about politics. Vampire the Masquerade, not the other World of Darkness games. But you could definitely start using that as educational tools about how government works, is using gaming, creating gaming. Your friend and my occasional enemy, Justin, has a card game, does he not, about elections and stuff?
He has a couple games, and they're both relevant to our interests. Although I have removed myself from his newsletter and stuff, but that's another story. So there are two games. One is called The Contender, which is really neat card game where you're playing through an election and you have like issues and you pit against each other. And I had the joy of when my youngest was, I think, about 14. I took a bunch of him and his friends camping and listening to them play and like debate these issues. It's a really neat game for that. The other game is Action News,
Mm-hmm.
which is silly and fun, but it's a look at our media, our news media, and how it works, because you've got like little cards with different headlines and different details, and you have to build a story that you then present to everyone. And
Right.
so, yeah, that's an interesting look about how that machine really works, and how, the responses you get from people matter in how you construct that narrative. So, yeah, both
Right.
really cool games.
But if you have the time, volunteer to be a someone who does a gaming club and something like that, and introduce these kind of games to help, with the education. That's not, you could do that and it not be considered evil or wrong, I hope, because they're just games. They're just games.
Well, and another thing you can do is just encourage folks to register other people to vote. That's something
Mm-hmm.
I did with my kids. I took them to events with clipboards. I They need service learning hours, and voter registration is a nonpartisan activity. And so as long as you've got an organization, there are plenty of nonpartisan organizations out there that do voter registration. So you have somebody who can sign off saying, yes, I supervise and they did this many hours. Use it for their service learning. Because just looking at the form, other than the one time you fill it out, and knowing what fields are necessary and why, the proper training for registering people to vote is simple, but it's something we don't quite understand. And people not having confidence in the election system is a whole aggravating thing that at a young, age, I mean, you don't want your kids to be all upset and fearful and worried about this stuff all the time and fighting about it. I mean, one of the biggest results of this election that, my youngest is really upset and his friends are upset because of who they are and because of their communities. And he's 21 now. For those who are going to yell at me, I got accused of indoctrinating my children recently because somebody didn't understand. My children range from 39 to 21. But when he was 12, when Trump got elected the first time, just because, I don't know, bumper stickers on my car or something he had, said at school at some point, some kid in a MAGA hat, shoved him up against the locker and started screaming at him, like, how do you like it now? And so I remembered, gosh, that's why he's so worried, upset about this. That's a visceral thing that happened. And I don't want kids engaging in that. It would be much better to have more civics clubs in schools where they talk to, have local council people come in and talk. Have the Board of Elections come in and talk about how the election is tallied, how the machines work, how voter registration, runs the person's information through a database so they're a citizen. Start dispelling disinformation by improving our education. If we have to do it through clubs because they leave all this stuff out of curriculums, that's something we can do.
And then you can expand that to adults and make it nonpartisan. It's make it clear we're not talking about politics, or what we're doing is we're talking about how the system works overall, and everything else. We're not talking about the individual policies or whatever, but we will bring a bill that may be up for a vote, and we'll discuss how that bill becomes a bill and becomes a law.
That's a really interesting idea. Making a book club where you grab a piece of current legislation from your state legislature and read it and talk about it. Oh, I'm so in. I'm not normal. I have to remember that. One of the first things, and Rob reminded me of it the other day, and I was getting frustrated at people not knowing stuff, and not just taking the extra steps to know, was he remembered me telling him one of the first things they did at campaign school at Yale, which is a nonpartisan educational thing, which is you have to remember when you're talking to other people about politics that you're not normal. And it's so much better than talk like you're talking to a fifth grader or a third grader, a lot of politicians get taught, in speech writing. But because some of us also don't appreciate being talked down to. You gotta take a balance there. But I'm not normal. And so as soon as you start talking to someone assuming they know things, you sound condescending and they tune you out. This is a huge problem Democrats have. We want to
Well, it's it's I talked to my neighbor, and he told me he was voting for Trump and everything. He's a good guy and everything else. He's helped me out in the past. It's not like he's an evil person, but he's concerned about immigration and stuff because he works in the construction industry. And my argument to him was less about the immigrants and more about the systemic I explained, what would be better and would cause this to be a lot less of your problem is if businesses who hired illegal immigrants under the table were properly punished when they were found out to have illegal immigrants, because that it comes from the top. So if you stop them from doing it, then you're not going to have to deal. I explained that system to him, and it kind of he's like, yeah, I agree with that. Those businesses should be punished for that. And, I understand about, I'm using that as an example, but there are things where you can kind of shift the conversation just slightly and be like, hey, but what if you look at it this way, and
Yeah.
everything else? And there
Like,
are,
and that's a
again,
great example because it's reflecting on talking about regulation where a certain sector of the population is all regulation is bad, and that's why I don't have money right now,
right.
right? Because that's the narrative that they've been fed. When people don't understand the everyday regulation that keeps our social contracts in order and protects us in everyday society.
Right. And so, I mean, but it's one of those things where if you shift it and shift it away from those individuals that are coming here to earn money to send back to their families or whatever the case, and shift it to the people that are profiting on the backs of these, taking your jobs away, because that's that fear. It's not happening, but that's that their fear, or lowering and we've discussed all of that. But focusing it on those people at the top that don't care about the common working people, and be like, hey, this is the problem that you currently have, is that these people are hiring these illegal immigrants, and if those people can't hire them anymore or are fined and put in jail for doing that, then the immigration problem would be a lot less problematic. If farmers and stuff like that hire, or if there was a system, and we've discussed that till length at this point, but that was his big, and that was one of the, and again, like you talked about, we've gone back to the um, one subject, one voter. They're focused on just this one thing, and they don't see the broader picture. Eggs are still expensive, gas is still at $3 a gallon, but they don't but they don't understand. I think part of the problem, and I will say this, part of the problem I think that with this election is so much people just wanted the memory hole that we had COVID, and COVID killed a lot of our supply chain. And now, and it was not, they talked about Harris talked about, the fact that there was this price, gouging and stuff by cereal companies and things like that, but didn't bring it back to remind people what COVID was like and why it caused so much problems. And I think, we try to forget COVID because it was horrible. And I understand that, but you can't forget that there was a supply crisis because everybody was afraid to leave their houses, you know. And so at that point with COVID, that's what caused some of this economic problems. And they needed to mention that. They needed to nail that to Trump. And they didn't, and that wasn't done enough because nobody wants to talk about COVID. I'm not blaming the Harris campaign. I understand it that COVID was traumatic and everything else, and people don't like
Well,
to
it
be
would sound like
reminded.
an excuse because
Right,
people aren't used to having things put in context. Like,
right,
there were a lot of things that were very different that affected our lives that the administration, but they could have been done a better job illustrating the how they fixed so many things.
right. That they should have been able to connect the dots, and the
Oh,
fact that
and comparing it to the rest of the world, so few people
right,
understand how like small our inflation was relatively. This wasn't a, a U.S. Biden administration created problem, and that
no,
would have been real easy to illustrate.
right. Yeah, but you connect the dots. Here's COVID. Here's the supply chain breaking down. Here's everything else. This is what. So then prices went up because of supply. That's just how it's supply and demand. Discuss the supply demand. This is what we did. We're now reshoring, chips back onto our onto our shores so that we're manufacturing our own computer chips, so we don't have that problem anymore and this problem anymore and everything else. And we're changing our supply chains around so it doesn't so that we have multiple places that we can get our stuff, and it's not just China anymore. That we're getting a lot of stuff from a lot of different countries now and everything else. And tariffs will basically cause everything to go up by 20 to 40% more, and you'll lose even more money than what you thought you lost now. Connect those dots. But again, that COVID thing sits there, and people are remembering, oh God, I was stuck in my apartment for or my house for 6 months playing Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal, because those are the two games that came out right as we were all getting on lockdown. So but those kind of discussions, and we didn't have those. So again, I'm not completely blaming the Harris campaign for that, because of the fact that nobody wants to talk about trauma, but on the same thing, they should have connected those dots a bit better. I think that would have been more important. But Jimmy Kimmel talked about how there was an uptick on who was still in the election. Is Biden still in the election? And I'm like, it's did we? How much more could we have done to make sure that people knew that Harris was winning, so they didn't see Biden's name on the ticket, so they voted for the only other white guy they saw, that they knew the name of? That wasn't, I think that's part of it. I think part of it also, and this is my personal feeling, is that right now in this nation, we are not going to elect a woman as president. There is still too much misogyny and too much bigotry, because she's also a woman of color, that there's too much of that, to where they feel that a woman is strong enough to be the head of the world. I disagree. I am of the opinion that I think a woman would do better, but I feel that there's still this large swath of people, men and women, that don't think a woman could be the head of the country. And I think that's what ultimately
really
did.
Hurts my heart that way.
It hurts my heart too, because I disagree, but we've had 2 elections to show it. Both of them competent women. Yes, Clinton had her faults, but Harris didn't. Harris had a lot of the backing of the Democratic Party and everything else.
The most qualified person in general who's ever run, in that she's run for and held offices in every branch of the government, like
right from city to state to federal.
And worked in judicial. Was an attorney general, was the freaking vice president. It's just sad. But
she's done that. That's all she's done is public service ever since she got out of law school. That is all she's done, is some kind of public service. She could have easily went into private practice and made lots of money, but she went into public service. The DA's office doesn't pay well, especially if you're a junior DA, until you get up, and she became the DA, and then she became the AG, and then she became a senator for the state of California, and then she was chosen and won as part of the ticket to be vice president. So she was one heartbeat away from being president. She knew everything that Joe Biden knew, as far as that's kind of concerned. She was in there making those kind of decisions. Or helping make those decisions, like Joe did with Obama.
And
Joe was there for
record-breaking number of actual votes to break ties in the Senate.
Yep. So she knows the legislative branch. She knew how judicial works. She knew she was the most qualified, and yet she was rejected. I think mostly if she was. If she was male, I think she would have been elected, but she wasn't, and that hurts me more than I can imagine, because Mexico is able to elect a woman president. We are so far behind as far as having women in the highest office versus the rest of the industrial world and some of the non-industrialized world. So. I don't get it, but that's my personal feel and take on it. Is less Harris did everything she possibly could do,
especially in the short amount of time.
Right. Would it have been better if she had the 2 years or whatever, or the year? I think so, but ultimately, I don't know if it would have changed that much, other than that we would have had more. It's one of those we don't know. Both of us.
We can't know.
Yeah.
There's some. Hopefully, Democrats don't take the wrong lessons away, and we find they find things about the surprising population breakaways.
Right, especially the Latinos vote and everything else. That was a. We'll have to.
White women, I'm so disappointed in you again.
I don't get it.
That one.
I was like, I don't. What more can you do to explain to white women that this president, especially when we get to our carrot and stick, because I'm. But yeah, the backlash since Trump won has been very misogynistic, very grossly misogynistic, to the point where I'm just like not wanting to deal with it. So, but let's talk about some things that we kind of already know. None of these have been set in stone, and for some cabinet positions, they have not been put in place because they have to go through Senate confirmation. Some of these are going to be made up stuff, but let's go over who may be in Trump's cabinet. Now the chief of staff is interesting because she is she worked for Bush. She worked she is a long time central moderate Republican kind of individual. And I think it'll be interesting to see how she tries to curb the more insane stuff that Trump tries to do. So I think, and her name is Susie Wiles. From what I've looked up from her and what I've heard and read about her, she seems extremely moderate for somebody who's going to be the chief of staff. So
there's no way she's moderate. There's no way. We'll see. I mean, he'd fire her because that's what he does, and he can just do that with his cabinet. And she was one of his campaign managers, dude.
True.
Think about how that campaign was run. Other than mechanically really well, but they had all the money in the world. They ran ads completely different, saying different things. Ads. Like in Pennsylvania, they ran ads saying that Kamala was pro-Israel in some places, and then that she was pro-Palestine in other places based on the demographics. So that's not moderation. That's slimy. And those are the kind of decisions she's making as a campaign manager.
Yeah.
So.
Next, border czar. He basically is threatening to take troops into sanctuary cities if the sanctuary cities doesn't help them out. I've seen a couple of videos of him discussing that before being picked as border czar, which is a non-cabinet position. It's basically a advisory board position kind of thing.
Yeah, they were going to slim everything down, but instead they're creating actual new departments and stuff too. But yeah.
So then we have Stefanik as U.S. ambassador, UN ambassador. I apologize. I don't know how that's going to go. Other than he is a Trump loyalist, and that will probably, I have a feeling that he's going to probably try to do things to make sure Russia takes over Ukraine, or at least keeps what they supposedly wanted initially and then lost during the Ukraine war, and probably is going to want Israel to, bomb the snot out of Gaza. Again, I don't understand how, like, the Muslim population either didn't vote for Kamala Harris or voted for Trump because they thought he would be a better choice as far as the Israel-Gaza conflict. I everything says that he is just going to have Netanyahu basically say, carpet bomb him and let God figure it out. And then on top of that, they picked Mike Huckabee to be the Israeli ambassador. And for those who don't know, there is this thing. I, as a theologian, there's not enough political or not enough biblical stuff for this to be what I find to be true. But as far as everything is concerned, the evangelical Christians believe that there needs to be a war in Israel, and that basically that's when Jesus will show back up, and that all the Jews have to be in Israel, or enough of the Jews have to be in Israel to where they'll either convert or they will be killed. And Huckabee is one of those evangelical Christians who believes that. He's a Zionist who believes into that situation. And I don't see how Israel is going to be pleased with having somebody who's basically hoping for the complete and total destruction of Israel or the Jewish people so that Christ can show back up, kind of thing. I don't know how they're going to feel about him being ambassador. That may not last long. But that is, one of the picks as far as the ambassadors are concerned, and that scares me. So then there's going to be the EPA administrator who's just going to make sure that we drill, baby, drill. Even though there's 900, even though there's already 900 unused drilling contracts that are out there that aren't being used because we already are producing more oil than or producing more gasoline than any other country in the world right now. So that's really not a thing. Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, does he have the chops? That's my question. I don't know. But you can read through. We'll be posting the link to that. The defense secretary is just.
So, the guy who's got other than the president, the nuclear codes.
Mm-hmm.
He picked a host of Fox and Friends.
Not even weekday. The weekend
The
Fox
weekend
and Friends.
edition.
Yeah, the B team. Yeah.
Yep.
I hope he doesn't make through the Senate because holy Moses.
I mean, that Secretary of State is 1.3 million active duty and another 1.4 million National Guard troops.
Right.
And he has no administrative experience. He was in the Army. That's all.
That's great. My dad was in the Army.
Well,
I wouldn't have.
I
know what I'm saying is I wouldn't have had
veterans organizations, but it's not like he has any governmental experience to be handling this.
No. He was a B team Fox and Friends host. Good Lord. Obviously, there's some loyalists that
lovely gems about this one.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so he did lobby Trump to intervene in the case of service members accused of war crimes, basically to stop letting soldiers be accused of war crimes. He cheered on January 6th. He got popular. His popularity soared when he hit a man with an axe by mistake on the show.
Oh yeah, he was throwing an axe and it hit and it went over the target. I saw the video. It went over the target and hit one of the drummers.
So in 2019, he said that he had not washed his hands in 10 years because he doesn't believe that germs are real. He said that women do not belong in combat and has been vocal about his opposition to the equity and inclusion measures. Yeah, there's a whole... He got a point and he's like, yes, we can get rid of all this wokeness. He said, what was it the other day, the quote I read? He said, Like the dumbest thing, he was in an interview. Like the dumbest thing ever said in our military is that our diversity makes us stronger. So we see where this is going, and bless all of our service members who are scared
Yeah.
right now because of this.
That's just it. I don't know why he was picked, because other than the fact that maybe him being the
likes his
worst
show.
one. Well, that may be it, because he was interviewed a couple of times on the weekend edition of Fox and Friends and everything else. But I'm just,
All about loyalty. People said the Clintons were like this. Trump
yeah,
is
but at least,
so like this. Like at least they know qualified people and value their loyalty. He values the loyalty of anyone who will kiss his ass and give him money. Even after
Right.
Rubio used to say horrible things about Trump.
call his penis small.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like yeah, but yeah. My hope is that the Senate doesn't lose their minds and confirm him, because he, that's just bad all the way around. They're Elon
There's
Musk
some very
and
hawkish people. So there's that.
Oh,
With
yeah.
him wanting to end all the wars, he chose several hawks.
yeah. Then you've got Elon Musk and Rashami, I can't pronounce his name properly, going to head a new department, quote unquote, the Department of Government Efficiency. So basically, it's a made-up department to make two rich people very happy that they can advise the president on how to not spend money and cut. The quote is, will pave the way for my administration to dismantle government bureaucracy / excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies.
Yeah, basically dismantle a whole lot of regulations so that they can get even richer.
Right. While possibly cutting the social safety net. Then there's Kristi Noem, who is going to be the Homeland Secretary if she's appointed, or the Senate allows her through. She is the woman that murdered the dog because it wouldn't behave better for her.
And her goat.
Just
She shot family goat. Yeah, just
yeah, she's a winner. I figure she was probably chosen because he probably wanted her as VP, because she was one of the people that was kind of being floated. But I think they were like, with the amount of people who love their pets, and they do the pet thing, where people love their pets. I don't think she would have been a good choice. But I still don't think what does she know about? She is like one of the things is like in this particular article, and I'm looking at Reuters. One of the particular things is she has been a keen fight she's been a keen fighter for the border crisis, sending National Guard down to Texas and everything else, and she's worked hard on keeping America safe. She lives in South Dakota. She doesn't have a border to any country. None. What does she know about border security? Nothing. This is,
yeah.
and there are others that, there are potential, secretaries
not
of
actually put out yet. And just
and this is just the start. And we're going to look at people and go, oh, this is this. Yeah. We'll have to see. Again, my ultimate hope is that there's going to be so much incompetence in the White House that they aren't able to do anything that they want to try to accomplish. That is my hope in this, is that they are just so daftly incompetent that they basically can't even flush the toilet. That's my hope right now, and I know it's not a helpful hope, but it's a hope. I mean, we gotta have some hope in this, all of this. So,
I have a.
what are your?
What am I? What?
What are your final thoughts on what we've got so far?
I want everyone to not give up hope, and get involved if you're afraid of how the results of this election is going to change your life. Look at things you can do. Prepare and protect yourself. Take care of your own mental health. Look out for your friends. Let them know that you're listening. I mean, I'm really, really glad our down ticket here is so strong. We elected Josh Stein and Rachel Hunt and Jeff Jackson and Mo Green. So, I mean, superintendent of schools and attorney general and governor and lieutenant governor are all people, Democrats and like strong people as far as getting things done. And if some of these departments, if Trump succeeds in some of his promises and starts dismantling things at a federal level, it gives us the best option for protecting ourselves and forming our state level society like they want
Yeah.
to bust us into. I mean, it's ironically the protection we have.
Yeah. And I am grateful that our state decided, even though they didn't elect Kamala Harris, which I think they should have, but at least the rest of the ticket was very blue down the ticket for the most part.
So many states did that. Every swing state did that.
That's interesting.
And people are like,
And
it's fishy. No, it's not. It's normal here in North Carolina. It's normal. And
right.
It happens all the time. People split their ticket like that, especially if they're holding their nose for a candidate, which they won't admit it. I think they might.
Yeah.
But it's a cover your ass thing, and it's not unusual. People, please calm down. Don't undermine the system further. It's really, really solid. If you don't believe it, tomorrow, Thursday's the last day. Get out there and they're looking for volunteers to cure ballots, and you'll learn an awful lot about how this shit works. It wasn't stolen. It's just really, really disappointing. People are saying it was Starlink, which uses Linux, and so then it could only count one side of the votes or the other. Our systems are not connected to the internet. They're just not. It's a security thing. We don't. I had to drive machines over to the Board of Elections after because, years ago there was you could dial in directly to upload your results. I don't think anybody even does that anymore. There might be places, but it's a direct. It's not using the internet. It's got nothing. No.
Right. I think it uses the intranet, which is an enclosed system at most that it does as far as uploading information. But even then, I don't think so.
No.
But our state doesn't do it. Some states may. That's I'm just there's no
state that the internet can access it or it goes over the internet to be uploaded.
Okay. Then it's all phone calls and stuff like that at this point.
It can be transferred machine to machine without using the internet or having outside ways to get in.
Right.
But anyway.
So, I talked to some. I was like, look, it's not uncommon for us to vote for red for president and blue for governor. Now, it is a bit unusual because we normally then vote red for our lieutenant governor. But I think they understood that Trump was going to be bad, could be bad, realized that, and decided to make sure that all of these were of the blue persuasion, for a lack of better term, so that they would be protected. But I had that discussion. It's not uncommon for at a I was talking to several people nationally. It's it's not uncommon, and everything else for that to happen. So. It isn't, and I think the buffers of these states and everything else, and what they're going to find is that these states will not, kowtow to what Trump wants to do as far as sending in troops and stuff like that, and everything else. That they won't send their National Guard into that because they're controlled by the governor.
So I found some information that there is some online voting, but. It's very little because it's proven insecure. But anyway.
Right. So, but with that said, why don't we, because the show has gone on long enough, why don't we get into our carrot and stick?
Okay. Hold out hope. Educate yourselves.
Yes.
Me. What's up, Doc?
So the carrot first, I want to talk about watching some of the pundits. I haven't watched every single pundit because I don't have that kind of time, and also I've been, taking time off for my mental health. But I've noticed that Lawrence O'Donnell, I've mentioned him in the past, but Lawrence O'Donnell is has not went into the circular flying squad about, blaming Harris or blaming the campaign or anything else. I've heard a lot of complaints about, us reaching across the aisle. That's something we should do anyways, kind of, or whatever, or not breaking enough away from Biden when it comes to Israel or whatever. He's been one of those that have been not doing that kind of stuff, that's been discussing ways to make sure that we can help each other and keep on fighting the good fight and not blaming someone else. So, luckily, so I just want to give a carrot to Lawrence O'Donnell for being one of the few pundits that I have seen that hasn't went completely, trying to blame something or someone, whether it be, Bernie Sanders blaming us for not, doing more for the working class, which I don't get at all, to people blaming Muslims for not voting for Harris and all this kind of stuff. It's like, we don't need that. What we need is finding common ground and fixing each other's problems. So that's where the carrot goes, and now the stick.
I actually have
go
a
ahead.
surprise carrot.
Okay, you do.
that
Okay.
I got from reading Heather Cock Richardson's stuff. Again, I recommend follow her. But surprise! So the CEO of ExxonMobil, Darren Woods, asked the incoming administration to not change Biden's climate policy or and saying the lack of consistency on climate change is bad for the economy. So, I mean, it's all about money, but has gone ahead and acknowledged that the need to address global emissions isn't going away. Exxon's investing in carbon capture, and I never thought I'd be given a carrot to ExxonMobil, but that's a leverage that could help with something really, really important.
It might cause Trump not to get out of the Paris Accords or whatever the case may be. So that's very good. That's what the carrot is actually supposed to be about, and I'm glad you found that and shared that. So, all right.
Don't you blaspheme in here! Don't you blaspheme in here!
So there's been this, and it's still going on. It started right after the election with Nick Fuentes saying this, and it's been one of those, watching that video of Nick Fuentes going off about, how women, how we can. Anyways, there's this new statement that dude bros have been saying to women, which is your body, my choice. And it's gross. It's disgusting. And while I do not advocate for violence, if someone comes up to a woman and says that, and if they happen to end up in the ER because they've been kicked in the balls so many times that they're swollen to extremely painful measures, I'm not going to shed a tear. Again, I'm not advocating for that. But if it happens, I'm not going to say anything either. It's one of those things. It's also
this
Nick
is another
Fuentes.
Someone I know tried to say that's not actually happening.
No, it's happening. I mean,
I know it's happening.
There was a freaking article written by The Guardian, who is is British, writing about this. This is why I posted that. It's like, holy shit, Britain even knows that we're stupid, at this point. And it's just, good God. And I think it was written today, in fact. Today's the 13th of November. So, it's absolutely gross. And, and
it won't go well for anyone who says that to me, but I don't expect they will.
No, well, to be fair, you're almost 6 foot tall.
I am not.
Well, I have to consider next to your husband, you're extremely tall. So it's like,
We're the same
and I
height.
I can't judge
I just
because I'm a
present
judge.
as tall, apparently. which
You
is-
present as tall. You present as very tall and everything else. But and
I'm
comparatively
like
to me,
5'7".
which is still tall for a woman, I am 6'5", so everybody's shorter than me for the most
Yeah.
part. So
I used to be 5'8". Now I'm old.
yeah, but I have there's especially parents with daughters are just I can understand upset about this and everything else, and now they're
I've
teaching
seen it.
their
I've seen it where it's happening in like a middle school, and the mom's reporting it, and the school administration's saying it's not happening, and that's very frustrating and upsetting to me because it's like I totally believe it's happening, especially when
Yeah.
in 2016 my son got bullied and pushed around.
right.
Middle school's the worst.
It's
It's the worst. I have seen very little, but I've seen similar things, accounts of dudes being like, haha, babe, you won't choose the bear after January.
Oh, yes. I have seen the meme where it's like, now you see why I've chosen you, and the bear's like, yeah, I understand completely. It's like, well, it's gross, and it's how could you say that to another human?
When I first saw the video of Nick Fuente saying it, I thought he was joking. It was so absurd and so over the top, and like he was laughing about it. I thought it was parody.
I thought it was a parody of Nick Fuentes. I didn't think it was actually somebody really saying it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, nope, this is the case. I'm like, holy shit. And it's like,
But people don't really believe that. Nobody's really saying it is my friend's argument, and
and
I
I'm going
couldn't
to say
even
this.
address that.
To me, that is very much
I had to just
rape culture.
unfollow.
That is very much a rape culture kind of situation.
Exactly.
At that point.
There's been a lot of discussions among women asking men that like if you see someone saying this, if you hear a man saying this, what will you say? And usually, it's like I say, would you say that to your mother? Blah blah. All right, what about not bringing in the other women? What would you say? And I was like, I think they should say, gosh, that sounds like what a rapist would say.
Yeah.
Because how do you come back from that? Because it just is.
It is. It is a rape culture situation where it's like, no one's going to believe you anyways, and you've just stated the
dude,
fact.
You sound like a rapist. I would love to hear one dude say that to another and shut them down with that.
Just So we are still going to do our call to action, though it's not election oriented. We are still going to do our call to action, and this one is, basically, first off, take the time that you need because some people are still mourning and still going through the grieving process and everything else, and find the self-care and take the time off. But secondly, and more importantly, find groups that and organize, even if it's weekly chats to find out what's going on in your part of the world. September is typing as we're speaking. Mobilize.us is still active.
Mobilize.us is still a thing. It's always a thing. Go to mobilize.us and you can find local stuff to do, whether it's sign a petition, it's going to a meeting. You can find like-minded people and do things.
And they brought Indivisible back, so that's a thing.
Too.
They brought Indivisible back and everything else. So, again, reach out to people that are like-minded and everything else because we need each other and we need to watch out for each other and those in our community. So, that is one of those things that we definitely need to do for each other is, watch out for each other and watch out, and make sure that we're keeping an eye and making sure everybody's safe, at this point. I'm not expecting people to step up and stand in front of, the police if they're trying to raid an immigrant's home or something. I'm not trying to, suggest that. But if you can do it, kind of situation. But I'm not suggesting it because not everybody has that ability. But definitely speak out. Definitely coordinate with other people in your area and be like, hey, this is what's happening on my street, kind of situation.
Learn your rights, coordinate everything, record everything.
Record everything. All right. Well, this has been a happy, joyful podcast, hasn't it? All right. So thank you for joining us at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow us on all the socials. That's Seth Roth II. You can also find the show at on Facebook, Twitter, not for much longer, YouTube, and any podcast catcher. Just Google us.
And I'm typing again. I'm September. You can follow me by going to my website, ninof12.com, ninof12.com. Connect to all my content. Also, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Heresy and Hearsay, where $2 a month can keep us going. Thank you for listening today, and bless your hearts.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Okay, I'll stop recording.